Britz. Alrighty, welcome guys. Thank you, Kamin Taute, for joining me today. Guys, welcome Kamin. She's results coach and consultant from Cape Town. Kamin, please introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do.
Thanks very much, Kevin, for the opportunity to be joining you today over lunch.
Yeah.
So I have a passion for mentoring and coaching, and I really established my coaching practice now nearly 2 years ago, having spent the majority of my time in the IT industry in various different roles. I became very curious about human behavior and about bringing about sustainable change. So I have my own coaching practice focusing on results coaching for individuals, teams, or even in the context of organizations. And together with that, I still do spend some of my time in IT consulting. I guess you never quite leave technology. It always will be an enabler, but it is an area of great comfort to me, and also a lot of experience being spent in that space.
The reason why I wanted to touch base with you is that this is lunchtime coaching, and essentially I was on a webinar the other day and you were speaking through coaching through COVID-19. And I know, everyone's really has an opinion currently, but, you said some really interesting stuff, and I was like, you know what, I should actually ask you if you'd like to put this out there, because I think it's going to add some wonderful value, and that's really an aim of what we're doing here, is just to add value in the smallest way we can. But please, won't you share some of the insights that you were sharing in your webinar, and tell us more about why you've taken this angle and what it is about?
Sure. So in the webinar, we were really very much focused on what the impact is of COVID-19, and we also spoke a little bit about the cycle of change and how we all find ourselves at a different point in that cycle of change, which ultimately starts with anger, denial, and then starts to move through depression or overwhelm into the bargaining and acceptance stages. And it was really just a point for us to reflect that we're all experiencing this pandemic very differently. So, if I asked you where you were today, you could tell me that you're very much in acceptance and the bargaining stages, but at the same time, something might change from an external environmental perspective, which has a direct impact on you, and you might feel like you're going back to anger or denial. Yeah. So that was the first thing that I shared in terms of some of the insights, and really just for us to reflect on where we find ourselves.
And also, one of the things you mentioned was how we, from my perspective, it's always pain and pleasure, and like how do we do those things? But you refer to it as away from threat and towards reward. Explain that to us, and why would that be useful in this sort of conversation?
So, Kevin, the very important part is that our brain craves certainty, and the way that our brain receives the lack of certainty is very similar to pain thresholds, and it's very much multiplied. So we have an organizing principle from a brain perspective, and these are the things that we're taught as results coaches under the guidance of David Rock, that founded the Neuro Leadership Institute more than 20 years ago, is that we have this organizing principle in terms of reward and threat states. And we know that a lot of the elements of the brain, like our reptile brains, are very underdeveloped in terms of our fight, flight, or freeze. And we're constantly in a level of some form of threat every day in this pandemic situation we find ourselves. So how do we learn to know what is our social drivers? And he's got a great tool called the SCARF. And the SCARF model very much looks at S stands for status, C for certainty, A for autonomy, R for relatedness, and F for fairness. And the question I posed in that webinar is, which of our drivers are not only more elevated than others in this height of pandemic, but what is our default state? So if you complete the SCARF assessment online, which you can do so for free, and we can happily share the link with your audience, you'll know what your profile looks like. So for example, certainty and fairness and relatedness are the 3 SCARF drivers or social drivers that are very high up for me in terms of my personal profile. But with the situation we're finding ourselves in COVID right now, autonomy is threatened. There's a very heightened degree of lack of certainty. And at the same time, relatedness, we're having to do things differently. Here we're sitting over a video today, which it might have been over a cup of coffee at a local coffee shop if we were in the same location.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are mentioning to me that they also feel that fairness is threatened. A lot of the things that are being done from an external decision-making perspective is letting their fairness meter stand up.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking now, I'm a business owner, I'm going through this and I'm having tough times. If you had to break it down into just little sections as relating to a business owner out there, or someone, an executive who's really going through some tough times, from a status perspective, how do I look at that? Is it literally my status is being affected? How does that apply to me as that business owner or executive?
So your status from a personal perspective is really about your importance in relation to others. So that's the context that you look at status within. So there are many facets from a personal perspective where you might feel that your status is impacted right now. Think of people within the business domain that might be going through retrenchments, where the financial stability is no longer allowing them to live the lifestyle that they do. Whatever the comparative factors are in terms of status for them. I think status, rightfully or wrongfully, is also often thought about what we own or what we drive. It is greater than that. How do you measure your relation in respect to others? So like you measure success might be vastly different from how I measure success.
Yeah.
So what really stands up for you within that specific area, and to explore that in a bit more detail. And when you go through the assessment, it gives you some ideas in terms of how you can move into the reward state in each one of these social drivers.
So would it be correct to say that the SCARF model itself shows us, which area that I feel like I'm being more affected in? Is that why it's sort of, is that the kind of reason why it was developed for me to have some idea of what is really being a threat right now?
So the real crux behind SCARF is about looking at high performance within an organization. So by understanding what your social drivers are, we're able to look at the things that can support moving you into a reward state. So for example, if you're an individual where certainty is a very key factor for you within your social drivers, if I'm your manager and I walk up to your desk and I tell you that you need to move, and I give you no context in terms of why you need to move, certainty is going to be triggered for you, and you're going to get stuck. So for me to be able to move you in terms of the conversation and have a more brain-friendly approach, I need to know that the way that I can shift you is by, for example, having said, we really need to be moving this department tomorrow, and the reasoning for that is, and to elaborate. Because when you're an individual that requires certainty, you don't always ask the questions that help you move from a threat space to a reward space.
Yeah.
And there are other reasons as to why that takes place. Often there's psychological safety that plays out. Whatever the reasons are in terms of why you're staying stuck.
Yeah.
It's about, from a management perspective, knowing how to be able to shift somebody ultimately. And that's the primary use for the tool. I use it in an individual context frequently, because I think when you can identify your own social drivers, and become aware of those with others, I think that you're in a position where not only by the strength of communication, you can get a much better outcome because you are more sensitive to the things that would trigger another individual.
So essentially, I mean, when you say certainty, I know for me, I think it's probably one of my highest values that I have, because when I don't have certainty about a relationship or a circumstance or a business deal, or my brain literally freaks out. And I think it touches on that point, because I think right now, as we know, certainty is really high up on the scale of like, oh my goodness, what is going to happen in the next 6 months? So please touch on I know you used an analogy about fog the other day. Please share that with us and break that down for us. And maybe it's a really nice way of using this and using it in conjunction with the SCARF model.
Absolutely. So I was reminded, not reintroduced, but reminded about the Lean Startup Principles, which literally is a book that was written by Eric Ries in 2004 already. And meeting a fellow results coach who's focusing on business growth, he shared with me about fog, facts, opinions, and guesses. And the strength of what he shared with me that day on the webinar was, how do you move something from a guess to an opinion to a fact? And immediately what came to mind for me is, in this great situation of uncertainty that we're experiencing, clearing the fog is an analogy that is exceptionally useful for me. Every time I have external or even internal information that is coming to me or being thought by myself, I immediately think, is that factual? Is it an opinion, or is it a guess? And it really helps me to establish some form of certainty. So in a recent coaching session with a client, where they were feeling exceptionally overwhelmed, we used fog. And we immediately had a look at what was factual and sure of, what was still in an opinion state, or what was still in a guess state. And I think the most important thing living in a highly uncertain world right now is getting some sense of calm. And if there is something that is very tangible, you might have something as an opinion or as a guess, but it's also important, Kevin, to be aware of where we're telling ourselves that story. Is it truly factual, or did we create that narrative for ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful analogy, and it's such a useful tool, because recently one of the things I came across is also the phrase mind management, and how important managing our mind has become. Because, being in the throes of COVID and watching the news, if you look at the riots happening, in America, we get so consumed with social media and being on our phones and being on a device, and a lot of the times we don't even pay attention to the fact that we're really focused on everything that's wrong with the situations right now. So, and the longer we do it, the more it happens, the more we focus on it, the more we find evidence to support whatever we're focused on. And essentially, that's what's so beautiful about the fog analogy, is that, is this a guesstimate? Like, what am I just guessing here? And how do I look at this as it's opinion, right? Or
opinion, that's correct, yeah.
So if you break it down like that, it's a really wonderful way of going, like you say, stop yourself in the day and go, hang on, let me look at this information that I am getting, and let me manage my mind a little bit better. Because if I don't, you just get stuck in that usual pattern of everyday life and what I keep doing and what I've done in the last 10 days or the last 10 months. And it's a beautiful analogy. I absolutely love that. How do we tie that into the SCARF model? How do we use that so that we can find some more clarity?
So I think that the clearing the fog is definitely for certainty. I think it's important for us right now to focus on gaining some form of certainty. So if we can leverage off the fog to establish that certainty to a large degree, I think we are already clearing the space for ourselves to be able to move out of that overwhelm into a more focused area. And that's ultimately what I was describing in the last webinar that we were on together as well. And I used the analogy of a man. And if I can demonstrate that with my hand for you, it was really about, at the top level of that individual, at your eye level, you would be solution orientated or solution focused. Below that, you would start to look at the planning, and beneath that, you'd start to look at the detail. Further below your midriff, we start to look at the problem and the drama space. And if I was to fold you in half, you can't see where you're going. So how do we create an environment for you that not only settles the anxiousness from a brain perspective, but allows you to come up using some of that detail, moving into a planning and a more focused environment. And even in the situation with COVID, if we can have an hour a day that's focused and solution orientated, we've achieved something, Kevin. We don't need 6 hours of being highly productive. We've got so many other responsibilities that we need to take care of right now in this situation. That I think if we can just establish the certainty by clearing that fog, we've gone a long way to winning the race towards how we approach the rest of our day.
And it's so true with what you're saying, because, you know, the number one that you're pointing out at your being your vision. One of the analogies I used the other day in a coaching session was very often because we get so caught up with the drama or the past and we think we've got vision, but it's almost like driving down the road and looking in your rearview mirror the whole time. You know, like, you know, you're going this way, but you're looking over there and you're kind of trying to navigate where you're going, but looking at what's wrong and what's, you know, what happened and what the last couple of 6 months have, you know, played out for my life. And it just becomes a complete debilitation. So, I mean, you get to move forward, but you're not really focused at having that kind of vision. And, you know, being able to clear all the unnecessary information that's coming at us, I think it really becomes part of having a better journey towards where I am going. Because like you're saying, you know, like the 80-20 principle, you know, if you just used some of that valuable time, the amount of output that you're getting from using really focused, dedicated hour of your day, and to maybe get that vision, maybe plan your day, sit down and really define what it is that you actually need to be focused on right now, it really will get you to be moving forward in the direction that you're looking at.
Absolutely. And I love the analogy that you were using earlier on around mind management. I've been focusing a lot of my time in regards to energy management recently to realize that there are some basics that we might have forgotten. You know, we have a rhythm, we have cycles associated to that. How are we leveraging the time that we're fundamentally operating at our best? You know, is that time that we can set aside to be optimal? Or yes, and I do realize that some people are unfortunately needing to use some of that time to focus on homeschooling or other tasks at hand. But how do we take the knowledge that we have as human beings and really look at how we apply that and these skills that are being taught during COVID in terms of getting that fundamental 1 hour in our day where we are exceptionally focused and able to move forward and gaining the results that we're looking for? And how do we measure that progress and return non-judgmentally? Because we seem to be quite hard on ourselves during this time. There seems to be this massive increase of the need to be productive, but yet, you know, that's clouded by a volume of responsibilities that we need to take care of too.
Yeah, and I think it's just, you know, for me, the more I talk to everybody about COVID and where we're at and what the solution is, I don't think there is just one, you know, like, this is the solution, this is what you should do. I think it's really just having that moment with yourself, and exactly why, you know, these lunchtime coaching sessions are what I want to do, sort of achieve with this, is just take that moment and really, if it's just that one thing that gives you a bit of sense of, okay, this has cleared something for me. This is a beautiful way of looking at it. Or, you know, sharing a story with someone in this half an hour that really just takes them and goes, well, I never thought of it that way. You know, that really makes such a huge difference to people's lives, because you know, people are consumed and people are stuck right now. And I think stuck is a big one that's coming up for a lot of people. So, Kamin, just to, we've got, it's almost 30 minutes, believe it or not. So in wrapping up, what can you leave with us in the conclusion? And then tell us where we can find more about you and what you do. Please share that with us.
Sure, thanks, Kevin. So I think if you're curious about what your SCARF profile looks like, by all means, you know, complete the assessment. We know what's standing up for us in terms of the time of COVID. Use clearing the fog to really gain some form of certainty. And in a way, get back to basics, things that you know have worked well for you in the past. If you're a morning person or an evening person, look for that 1 hour where you can be high performing, but also have a look at the things that are holding you back from moving you into that space. And I love that you've launched these sessions, because it really is about gifting yourself a half an hour to gain some insight. You know, if there's one thing that you walk away with after a conversation of this nature is, has there been something that has really sparked the aha for me? something that I can take away and something that I can move forward with. So Kevin,
I want to just add before you finish, I want to add it's so important. You know, I've in so many sessions that I do with people, it's so important to be able to take the time for me. You know, a lot of people don't even know that how important I am as an individual for my life, and I matter. You know, they don't take the time to say, you know what, I want half an hour of just being away from everyone and listening to something that makes me think about something, and maybe it just makes that shift. But I think it's really what it really is about. Is like, take some time for you, because doing this bit of work can really shift and really make little movements. And all you need to do is those incremental little steps, you know, and eventually it sort of carves out the vision and the direction to where you're going. It doesn't need to be moving a mountain right now. Just little incremental steps, I think. But please tell us where we can get hold of you.
Sure. So you can definitely find some more information on the website, which is Kamin Taute, spelled KAMINTAUTE.co.za, or you'll find me on most of the social media platforms.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you were saying earlier on. I have started a group called Shift Your Perspective, and every single day it's really just a reminder of something that might help you at that moment in time to see things differently. But I think in closure, Kevin, what you were saying earlier on, you are so correct, but we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to not be so judgmental, and we really need to allow ourselves the opportunity, time and space to grow. We're all faced with this pandemic at a global level, but I love the story that was shared about we're all in the same storm, but each one of us are in a different boat. So take the time that you need, you know, to weather this.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Kamin, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the insights. It's always such a good pleasure I love talking to you. Just my brain starts, you know, and if I don't check the time, I know that it's gonna get carried away. But so it's Kamin Taute at .co.za and everywhere on social media. And we will share the link that for the assessment in the video below. So anywhere on YouTube or on Instagram stories, the video will be on there, and I'll also share it on LinkedIn and Facebook. But check in the description below for all the information. It will all be there. Kamin, thank you so much, and I will see you again online. Have a fantastic day, and thanks for joining me.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.